Application Technical Assistance webinar. And thank you for those of you who have indicated you can hear me in the chat. Wonderful. Again, my name is Megan Dumont, Program Analyst, Division of Teaching and Learning. Our agenda for today, we are going to have a quick welcome and housekeeping. We'll review some important dates, the grant background, grant requirements, application requirements, the application review process, and then have time for a Q&A and additionally a potential meet and greet. More on that in just a moment. So some reminders, as we've been in many online meetings. I'm sure many of you have heard these before, but we are recording this webinar. So if you'll please mute your microphones and turn off your cameras, so that way the webinar does not have any audio interference. You may ask questions throughout the webinar in the chat. I'm monitoring it as best I can, but we will also have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar where you'll be able to ask your questions either in the chat box or by unmuting your microphone and sharing with the group. Additionally, this slide deck and a recording of the webinar will be made available at the end of the presentation. And I do want to just quickly, third time's the charm here, I'm going to quickly drop a link in the chat for a Google folder that will have resources that we will review today. So I want you to have that now. So that Google folder will have some resources that I will highlight as we go through the webinar. Great. So a quick review of some important dates related to the CLSD grant. On Friday, June 11th, the notice of funding availability was released in the DC Register, and there are two NOFAs, one for the Birth Through 5 subgrant, which we're reviewing today, and one for the K-12 subgrant. The request for applications and the application availability within EGMS both happened last Friday, July 30th, so both are now live. The notification of intent to apply deadline is Friday, August 13th. More on that later. The application is due, and this is the most important date probably you'll hear today for our purposes, is due on Monday, August 30th at 3 p.m. We do recommend submitting early. This deadline is firm. Late and incomplete applications will not be accepted or considered. So please be sure you have this date ready to go. And OSSE anticipates announcing awards on or around Friday, September 24th. So let's get into some background about the CLSD grant. So as previously announced by Mayor Bowser in September 2020, the U.S. Department of Education awarded the D.C. Office of the State Superintendent of Education, OSSE, with a $16 million grant to improve literacy. These funds will be used to support, strengthen, and extend literacy development and instruction for students in the district birth through grade 12. This is very exciting because this program will extend across the spectrum of children and students served throughout our city. CLSD grant funds will be used to improve language and literacy development for children in the district by addressing gaps in critical resources, staff capacity, and opportunity for nearly 25,000 district youth, including almost 19,000 children who live in qualified opportunity zones, and more on that later. Specifically, the subgrant will support early learning and literacy skills for children in kindergarten, increase the number of children reading on grade level by the end of third grade, and boost reading proficiencies for children grade 3 through high school. To further support these outcomes, OSSE will use CLSD grant funds to invest in our amazing workforce of educators and childcare providers. This includes efforts to strengthen educator pipelines, develop a statewide literacy coaching program, and enhance licensure requirements to increase all educators' preparedness for literacy instruction. So the why of this work and why it's so important to us here in the district, grant funds will be used to prioritize children who are furthest from opportunity. These are children living in poverty, children with disabilities, and English learners. So the CLSD program is a federal program, and it is authorized by the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. And so this slide just gives you an overview of that authorizing legislation and the source of funding for the CLSD Birth to Age 5 subgrant. Because this is a federal program, the grant funds are subject to regulations and guidance under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act as amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And my slides appear to be a bit out of order. This connects back to what we were discussing earlier with the why of the CLSD. So we do have grant objectives. So OSSI over the next 5 years will leverage grant funds to support early learning, early language and literacy skills, increase the number of students reading on grade level in grade 3 through high school, and improve outcomes for approximately 25,000 disadvantaged and traditionally underserved children and students by targeting qualified opportunity zones and highest need populations. So the CLSD requires that 95% of the total funds of the grant that was awarded to OSSI be disseminated to LEAs, CBOs, and for the Birth Through 5 grant, also organizations serving all children birth to age 5, which includes child development centers and LEAs. So today we're discussing the Birth to Age 5 subgrant, which is this 15% that you see highlighted. And this pie chart gives you a breakdown of exactly how the funds will be disseminated from the CLSD. So 40% to grades K through 5, 40% to grades 6 through 12, 15% from birth to age 5, and 5% retained for state funds. So specifically for the subgrant we're discussing today, the CLSD Birth to Age 5 subgrant, the total funding available for this award is $2.4 million over 4 years, subject to continued availability of funding. And yes, you will receive a copy of these slides for future reference, so no worries, no need to keep up. And I will also give you a webinar recording. So let me backtrack about this slide. So $2.4 million over 4 years, subject to continued availability of funding. OSSI will anticipates awarding up to 4 subgrants for the Birth to Age 5 subgrant. So that means 4 applications will be successful in being up to 4 will be selected and be successful in their application to receive this funding. The eligible entities are based on CDF sizes as described below. So as you can see, we've tiered, and that says CDF sizes, but for the Birth to Age 5 subgrant, there's actually some more flexibility. So that includes CDFs, LEAs, or consortia. And you can see we have tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And these are estimates of what we anticipate may be awarded to these entities based on size. So the grant period will begin on October 1st, 2021 and end on September 30th, 2025. So these are estimates, but this is intended to give you a framework to think about for your organization as you're completing your application about approximately how much funding you should be budgeting for and the related projects that you might want to fulfill with this funding. So now that we've had a chance to get into the background of the CLSD Birth Through Age 5 subgrant, let's get into some of the requirements. So who can apply for the Birth to Age 5 grant? So this visual is intended to kind of help us understand who's eligible. So for this subgrant, you could be a child development center, a child development home, a single site LEA, an LEA with multiple school sites. Those would need to be serving students ages 3 through 5, so your pre-K programs. There's also an exciting opportunity to apply as a consortium. So by working together with Birth to Age 5 organizations, leadership and staff from smaller sized child development facilities and public charter school campuses serving 3 to 5-year-olds and other early childhood programs will have the opportunity to interact with broader group of early childhood experts share strategies and resources, and basically plan together to celebrate and plan for growth and literacy achievement. So this type of collaboration can have a cataclysmic impact at the individual, community, and system levels while streamlining the grantee role and administrative grant responsibilities under one lead organization on behalf of the consortium. So the consortium option, we hopefully will have time at the end of today's presentation for you to possibly connect. And OSSI is serving sort of as a matchmaker for organizations that may be interested in applying under the consortium model. Some additional details about subgrant eligibility for the Birth Through 5 subgrant. So funds will be made available through a competitive process. To apply for this grant, an eligible entity must be a District of Columbia child development facility, LEA, or nonprofit organization leading a consortium serving the highest need and most underserved population of children ranging from birth to age 5. So there were details about the consortium and hyperlinked in this slide deck. I don't believe it's in the Google folder I shared, but I will share the slide deck later and this form, and if you're interested in filling it out. But this is an interest form for the consortium, and as I previously stated, OSSI will serve sort of as a matchmaker to try to link organizations that might be interested in joining or applying as a consortium. And thank you to those of you who have already filled out this application, or this form, excuse me. For the purpose of this grant, high need means an entity serving children from birth through age 5 who are from families with income levels at or below 200% of the federal poverty line. So the requirements for the subgrant, the purpose of this information today is just to assist you in thinking about your capacity as an organization and putting together your application so that you have a clear picture of what will be required for you as a potential subgrantee. So CLSD birth to age 5 subgrantees will be required to develop and implement a local literacy plan, provide a full continuum of school and center-based literacy intervention services with developmentally appropriate components for each age, select and implement evidence-based interventions, collect data on student progress, and submit mid-year and end-of-year programmatic and fiscal supports. For all of these requirements, the OSSI team will provide structures and supports to facilitate subgrantee success, and there will be consistent opportunities for collaboration and technical assistance. So OSSI wants interested applicants to be aware of these requirements, but we also want to be clear that this will be a collaborative process that we will work with subgrantees to do our best to ensure success. And that will go for all of these requirement slides that I review now. So subgrantees will also be required to collaborate with the OSSI Teaching and Learning Grant Manager. That could include providing information like positive outcome stories, celebrations, information about events, sharing any issues or concerns you may have, sharing best practices, and participating in citywide professional learning convenings, as well as community of practice events, and complete questionnaires regarding grant programming. So there will be reporting and monitoring requirements for subgrantees. So for reporting, subgrantees will be required to provide information requested via surveys and other data collection projects using methods identified by OSSI, submit biannual fiscal reports and any other required information in a timely and efficient manner, file expenditure reports through EGMS within 90 days of the end of each annual budget period, and file final grant activity reports through EGMS within 90 days of the end of the subgrant. For monitoring, OSSI may utilize several methods to monitor the project, including but not limited to site visits, collection of program and performance data, and financial reports. The grant recipients will also be required to submit a midterm and final report, as previously mentioned, illustrating the use of funds and the progress towards goal attainment. and subgrantees will be required to attend an OSCE-led biannual literacy convening. So these reporting and monitoring requirements are to, again, help give you a framework for what we're expecting for subgrantees, but there may be additional requirements as needed as the project continues across the next 4 years. So as part of the CLSD grant, OSCE is very excited to announce the DC Comprehensive Literacy Plan, which establishes the principles for literacy instruction that are rooted in evidence-based strategies. So the the CLP plan was developed by nearly 50 educators and literacy experts with a diverse range of experiences and perspectives. The District of Columbia defines literacy as the ability to talk, listen, read, and write, leading to the ability to communicate and learn. It is a combination of skills and vocabulary, receptive and expressive language, phonological awareness, knowledge of print, comprehension, and printed materials. So as I said, the CLP establishes our guiding principles for literacy instruction, and the CLP further reflects the district's commitment to and belief that all children have the capacity to and can, with the right instruction and supports, become successful readers. And so this is part of our Literacy DC program, which is part of the CLSD. The CLP is district-wide, but of course we recognize that your unique LEA or Child Development Center or organization have your own unique set of circumstances. And so we are encouraging, OSCE is encouraging LEAs to develop their own, LEAs, CDF organizations to develop their own local literacy plan using the CLP as a guide. So the local literacy plan is encouraged for everyone throughout the district, but it is also a requirement for the application for the CLSD Birth Through 5 subgrant. So applicants are required to submit a local literacy plan that includes a needs assessment, stakeholder input, evidence-based strategies, and a timeline for implementation. OSCE has created a robust set of resources to assist you in developing a local literacy plan. Some of you may have even attended these sessions that occurred this spring. There are several recorded webinars that you can find hyperlinked in this slide deck and also on the Literacy DC website. These will give kind of an overview of everything that you need to do to create your local literacy plan. There are also downloadable templates available, including a local literacy plan template that your organization could use to develop your own LLP for the purpose of this application. So highlighting these resources, you can see on our new Literacy DC website, we do have a page that has all of this information organized for you. The LLP template, which is also included in the Google folder, the link I dropped at the beginning of the session and will drop again at the end. You can download that template directly and work with your team to create an LLP. And within EGMS, for the requirement for this application, you'll be able to actually just upload that if that is easiest for you. So this template gives a lot of information and will be really helpful to your organization in developing your LLP. Another resource we want to highlight is the LLP self-assessment. There is a comprehensive self-assessment tool for both birth to age 5 and grades K through 12. So if your organization is working across both age groups, you can find both available to you. But for the majority of you today who are focusing on our children birth to age 5, you'll want to use this template or this self-assessment tool. This tool can be used by your organization to determine needs and areas of strength. And there's a rubric available for several domains and indicators. And this can be very helpful in informing your work to develop your LLP. Many of you may have been already been doing some of this self-assessment work given COVID-19 and all of the other related programs going on at the beginning of the school year this year during this complicated time. So this might be helpful to help you focus on what the work you're already doing into literacy work and developing your LLP. So again, this can be found within the Google folder and also on the Literacy DOC website. Okay, so another thing to think about with grant requirements is the allowable use of funds, what you could actually plan to use these CLSD funds for your organization. So grant funds may only be used for allowable grant project expenditures. Funding may not be used for travel expenses for grantee personnel, but funding may be used to cover costs for salaries and benefits of grantee personnel, materials, and training. Subgrantees must use funds to supplement and not supplant non-federal funds and that would otherwise be used for activities authorized under this grant. So specifically for birth to age 5, allowable activities include carrying out high quality professional development opportunities for relevant educational personnel and staff, training providers and personnel to develop and administer evidence-based early childhood education literacy initiatives, and coordinating the involvement of families and relevant personnel in literacy development of children served under the subgrant. And as mentioned before, CLSD is a federal program, so these allowable activities are authorized by the ESSA legislation, so they are federally set allowable activities. Okay, so now that we have an understanding of the grant background and what will be required of subgrantees, let's talk about the actual subgrant application. So submission requirements. All applications must be submitted through eGMS, which can be accessed at grants.osce.dc.gov. This is a competitive grant, so all applicants must complete the Central Data Application Certifications and Assurances tab in order to submit an application. So applicants must also complete the Central Data Application with a valid system for award management registration. But I've been asked by our eGMS team to specifically highlight that you must complete Central Data Application Certifications and Assurances tab. Additionally, we will not be accepting emailed or faxed applications. Once an application has been submitted, it may not be revised. And OSCE will notify all applicants about the status of their application, whether or not you are selected for funding. So again, this very important date, August 30th, 2021 at 3 p.m., that is when applications must be received. No late submissions will be accepted. No incomplete submissions will be accepted. So please start early. There is support available to you from eGMS Help, and that information is on the bottom of the slide. So again, central data. So when you are in eGMS, you'll see you'll be able to find central data. It'll look like another application. You will need to go into that central data application and complete the tab is this first circle here, or the smaller circle, certifications and assurances. And then within that tab, there are 3 sub-tabs. You need to complete those. This is very important because this is a competitive grant. Okay, some tips for eGMS. Be sure to save early and often because the system does time out after 60 minutes of inactivity. Again, there's help available to you from eGMS Help Center, which you can either email them at osce.callcenter@dc.gov or by calling them at 202-719-6500. And they're available 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. But it is important to note that having a record of contact with the eGMS Help Center does not give you any additional time for your application. So if it's 2:55 p.m. on August 30th and you're having an issue, be sure to contact them, yes, but that if it's not in by 3 o'clock, unfortunately, we will not be able to give any extension. So just be aware of that. There are details here about how you may print your application. And again, start and submit early so you can avoid any last-minute technical issues. Within the application, there is an option to provide, well, there are several places where we're requesting narrative responses, and there is a text box available that has a 10,000 word limit, but you also have the option to upload information. So for your LLP, for example, if you're using that template, you might want to upload that directly, and there are directions about how to do that within the application. So in the EGMS CLSD birth through 5 subgrant application, the following tabs are included, and the tabs will, this is a different application, but again, you see these when I'm saying tabs, I'm referring to these blue tabs that you'll see within EGMS. So for this specific subgrant, the tabs that are included are contact information, program selection, and that'll be the size based on using those tier sizes from the previous slide about the budget, executive summary, program features, including your local literacy plan, program implementation and monitoring, financial management and sustainability, and competitive priority points. And again, you'll see all of these within the EGMS application, and they are described also within the CLSD birth through 5 RFA. For the budget, you are required to submit a proposed budget for the CLSD subgrant. You also are required to include a budget narrative. The narrative should include a proposed use of grant funds, which will reflect a core concept of service coordination and integration. And the narrative shall also include the cost of all deliverables, including personnel, using the budget categories identified in the grant application, which you will see within EGMS. Applicants are asked to budget their award over the entire award period, which crosses 4 local fiscal years. So for example, if your entity was a tier 2 entity based on the number of children you serve, you should budget for up to $225,000 per year over 4 years and submit a budget that totals approximately $900,000. So if we just want to show you where I got that information from. Back here on slide 14, you see I just as the example, I'm imagining I'm an entity serving 400 children, so I could budget up to $225,000 per year. So across the 4 years, I'm going to submit in my application a project budget that's approximately $900,000. Hope that is helpful. Just a second. Great. So once you get to this point, congratulations. That means you have worked on your application. So in order to submit, you must hit the consistency check button first. You'll see this at the end of your application. That will help to make sure that if there are any required parts missing, it'll highlight it in red so you can go back and complete those pieces. Then you'll be asked to lock the application. And once you've locked your application, you will be able to submit it within EGMS. And again, you must submit this application within EGMS prior to, no later than August 30th at 3 p.m. So there are several required documents. One is the local literacy plan that we already discussed. The administrative approval form is within EGMS, and then the notification of notification of intent to apply form is due by next Friday, August 13th at 5 p.m. So that form is included within the Google folder I put in the chat earlier. It is also an appendix an attachment, in the RFA. You can download that form and complete it, and you can either download it or scan it and send it back to me at aussie.clsd@dc.gov prior to that due date. And yes, the notification of intent to apply form is a requirement of the application. Okay, so now let's see what will happen with applications after they've been submitted for the application review process. So here's an overview. The application deadline again is 3 p.m. on Monday, August 30th. Applications must be submitted through EGMS, and late applications, again, will not be accepted. Once the applications have been submitted, applications will be scored. Thank you, Gwen. Applications will be scored by external reviewers. Applications will be reviewed, scored, and ranked using the CLSD Birth Through 5 subgrant rubric, which we will go over an overview of and is included in that Google folder that Gwen has graciously resent the link for. And subgrantees are anticipated to be announced on Friday, September 24th. So the application review will be completed by a panel or panels of external reviewers who will be convened to review, score, and rank each application. The review panel will be composed of neutral, qualified, and professional individuals who will be selected for their expertise, knowledge, and or related experiences. All external reviewers will be required to sign a conflict of interest statement for each application that they review. And upon the completion of the panel's review, they will make recommendations for awards based on the rubrics. And the state superintendent of education or a designee will review those recommendations, but all final award decisions are up to the discretion of the superintendent or the designee. Oops, and what did I just do? Excuse me. Clicked on the wrong thing. We'll get back in business. Here we go. So this is an overview of the rubric, and a PDF of the rubric is included in the Google folder. The rubric is also at the end of the CLSD Birth Through Age 5 RFA document, and you can also see it within EGMS. So there are 4 sections. Sections A, B, and C will total 100 points. So section A is program features, the requirements of the grant and program goals. Section B is program implementation and monitoring. And it includes implementation of literacy interventions, development of program staff, data collection and analysis, and evaluation of program. Section C is financial management and sustainability. And section D is priority points. So section D is 10 additional points that applicants can receive based on their location within a qualified opportunity zone and based on their use of evidence-based literacy interventions. So the priority points, again, are in addition to the 100 points of the main rubric. So they're 5 points each. So the first is if you are serving children attending LEAs or CDFs located within qualified opportunity zones, and demonstration that you'll be implementing evidence-based practices and strategies. And there is a section within the EGMS application that will provide you an opportunity to indicate if you would qualify for either of these priority points. And again, they're each worth 5 points on the scoring rubric. So digging in further to the qualified opportunity zones, which is something you may have heard mentioned throughout this presentation. So Opportunity Zones is a federal program created in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The purpose of the zones is to provide tax incentives for investments, including new businesses and commercial projects in low-income communities. These tracks are designed by the IRS and the U.S. Department of the Treasury and are not determined by OSSI. So within that Google folder, there is a one-pager that has been created by our team that explains more about qualified opportunity zones. And there's also a listing of LEAs or CDFs that are located within qualified opportunity zones. I know there's many questions probably related to the QOZs, which I'm happy to go into more of. So I just want to underscore here that the qualified opportunity zones for the subgrant application are a priority point, so they are not a requirement. So if you are an eligible entity, but you are not located within the qualified opportunity zone, you are still eligible to apply. You just may not get those 5 priority points on the rubric. Additionally, if you are an LEA or a group of child development centers or a consortium and you have locations within qualified opportunity zones, even if it's not all of your locations, you do not need to be within the QOZ. So I'm trying to think of a good example. For example, if you're a multi-site LEA and one of your schools is located within a qualified opportunity zone, but not all of them, you could still be eligible for these priority points. And you would need to just indicate that within your application on EGMS. Okay, so some overall resources for CLSD. Your best source of information about the DC CLSD is the new Literacy DC website. It includes information about CLSD and the comprehensive literacy plan. That website will continue to be updated as new information becomes available, so please be sure to check it out. Right now, you can find on there the links for the RFAs, you can find the comprehensive literacy plan, and you can find all of the resources that were reviewed today for local literacy plans. Additionally, because CLSD again is a federal program, you can find information about the federal Comprehensive Literacy State Development Program at the United States Department of Education, Office of Elementary and Secondary Education. And that all of these blue sections here are hyperlinked. So when I send you the slide deck later today, you can click right on those and get that information. And finally, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Again, my name is Megan Dumond. I'm a program analyst here in the Division of Teaching and Learning. You can feel free to email me directly. I believe you all who are in the meeting today will have my email from the calendar invite. You can also email aussie.clsd@dc.gov at any time. That mailbox is monitored frequently, so we can get you a quick response on any questions or clarifications that you're looking for. And I am especially closely monitoring it during this application window. You may also contact me via phone at 202-727-3666. And again, Literacy DC has a lot of great information. So that concludes my information. I want to pause for a Q&A before really opening things up to potentially allow for some kind of some matchmaking with regard to the consortium. So I'm just going to scroll up through these chats now and see if I've missed any questions, which I certainly have. So again, I will be sending a copy of these slides and a webinar recording to you all following the presentation later this afternoon. So centers that meet the requirements, I'm seeing that, okay, I noticed there are centers that meet the requirements but do not qualify to apply based on the DC opportunity zone. So again, your center or your LEA does not need to be in a qualified opportunity zone to apply. The qualified opportunity zone is a priority point, which would just give you extra points on your application, but they are not required. Centers are in the same community are eligible while others are not. Can you explain this? So again, do not need to be in a qualified opportunity zone to be eligible for the CLSD Birth to Age 5 subgrant, just to receive those 5 priority points. The QOZs are not set by OSSI. They are designated through the Opportunity Zones program, and they are based on these very specific census tracts. So it is possible for centers, LEAs, schools who are, on the same block, even, well, not the same block, but in the same community, to one is a QOZ and one is not. That's just kind of how this works. But please, if your organization is not listed as a QOZ, but you're eligible, you meet the criteria, do not be discouraged. You are still eligible to apply for this subgrant. I hope that that is more clear. Certificate of good standing is good if issued in 2019, or you should get a new one. The individual who asked about it just shows up for me as unknown user, but if you asked about the certificate of good standing, if you could please put your name and your organization in the chat so I can follow up with you regarding the certificate of good standing, because I'll need to look into that information to get it to you. And thank you for asking that question. In terms of Ms. Parker asking, is it required for submission? Again, no, you are not required to be in a qualified opportunity zone to apply. The only thing the qualified opportunity zone just gives you 5 priority points on the scoring rubric. So questions regarding the consortium or applying solo. I think that has to do a lot with thinking about your capacity and what your goals are for potentially using these CLSD funds. So if you are a smaller entity that you feel like you would benefit from having some capacity building assistance from a nonprofit organization or from other centers, and you think that that collaboration would be important for you to meet your goals, then I think that's something definitely to consider. And we can talk more about the consortium as well in just a moment. And then Scott, I see your message. Do you have a list of liable expenses for the budget? Do you mean allowable expenses for the budget? And if so, that is the categories for the budget are within EGMS, within the budget section. Yes. Okay, so for the allowable expenses, those are, we do have that list. These are the allowable activities, the allowable expenses. So professional development, evidence-based educational or early childhood literacy initiatives, and family early childhood programs. These are the allowable activities designated on the federal level. In terms of the categories within the budget, that is going to be within EGMS on the budget tab. Okay, are there any additional questions? You can feel free to ask in the chat, or you can feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask your question out loud. Give a couple more minutes. As you might be thinking of your final questions, I also want to say that I think this would probably be a good time if you are considering applying as a member of the consortium to stay on the line, and I'll stop sharing my screen in just a moment as soon as we're clear that we have no other questions, so we can actually connect and potentially have some introductions now, again, as kind of a matchmaker. So a larger organization, benefits of joining as a consortium with smaller entities. I think that would be, excuse me, I'm using a microphone. I think I just got too close. That would really be up to your discretion. I think the benefit would be that you could leverage the resources and the systems that you have in your larger organization to have a broader impact. That's the most obvious benefit, I think. So if you feel that you have specific goals related to your organization that could go beyond just the scope of the children that you're serving, the consortium would be an opportunity to partner with other organizations, either in your community or across the district, to expand and kind of broaden that impact. And additionally, the consortium just offers an opportunity to kind of share the subgrantee requirement and monitoring burdens. So you can share your infrastructure. You can help build capacity in other organizations. Those are some of the benefits. but I think it mostly is up to the discretion of your organization to think through what would make the most sense for you. Are there any other questions related to the application, not related to the consortium, just because we'll open it up to just the consortium if we still have some people interested in having that conversation. But are there any questions specifically about the subgrant application? And again, the applications are due August 30th, 3 p.m. So please plan accordingly. And if you have questions after this session, again, feel free to reach out to me and I will send the webinar and the webinar recording so you may share it with other members of your team who may be part of your application process. Give another few seconds for any questions. Yes, Dolores, thank you. So to get to the application, you'll need to use what's called EGMS. So you can access that by going to grants.osce.dc.gov. And once you're within EGMS, you should be able to locate the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant for birth through age 5. And the tabs and all the requirements will be listed within EGMS. Okay, great. So I'm going to
Megan?
yes, Buen.
Yes, can you talk about applying as a single entity or a consortium only and not apply that cannot apply as a single entity and consortium?
Thank you, Buen. I did forget to state that. So yes, so looking back at who can apply for the birth to age 5 subgrant. So you need to make a decision as an organization if you will apply either on your own independently. So let's say you're a single site LEA, or you either need to decide if you'll apply just as your own single site LEA, or if you're going to join a consortium and apply as part of that consortium. You cannot apply independently and as part of a consortium. So if I'm, Megan Dumon's Child Development Center, I cannot submit an application as Megan Dumon's Child Development Center and also as a member of a consortium with, Megan Dumont Elementary School down the street and the great organization in our community. You have to make a selection of whether you're going to apply independently or as part of a consortium.